She fought monsters at dawn, yet the classroom froze when she walked in HFY Sci-Fi Best Stories. The first light of dawn barely touched the edges of the ruined city, painting the smoke-filled sky with streaks of red and gold. The streets were empty, except for the scattered remnants of what had once been a bustling city. Cars lay overturned, and shattered glass glimmered like tiny stars on the cracked asphalt. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, fading into silence almost as quickly as it had started. The world seemed fragile, as if it could shatter at any moment. And yet, in the midst of all this, one figure moved with a calm precision that made the chaos around her almost seem ordinary. Alara Voss, a teenage girl with sharp eyes and a steady gait, advanced down the street. She carried no heavy armor, no massive weapons, yet she radiated a presence that made the monsters around her hesitate. Her energy blades hummed softly at her sides, tiny arcs of blue light reflecting in the cracked windows of nearby buildings. The first monster emerged from the ruins of what had once been a school. It was massive, easily twice the height of a man, with limbs that bent in strange directions and skin that shimmered with an unnatural black sheen. Its eyes glowed a harsh yellow, scanning the street as it sniffed the air. When it spotted Alara, a deep, guttural roar echoed across the city, sending birds and small debris into the sky. Alara did not flinch. She had faced creatures like this before, countless times, and she knew fear was the enemy of action. She crouched low, watching its movements carefully. The creature was fast, faster than any human could hope to be, but it was also predictable in its aggression. Timing, precision, and observation had always been her tools. The monster lunged. Alara rolled to the side, letting its clawed foot smash into the pavement where she had been standing moments before. Sparks flew as it struck a metal pole, bending it under the force. She sprang to her feet and activated her kinetic shield, a faint bubble of energy forming around her. The creature hesitated, striking at the invisible barrier with all its might, but the shield held firm. Alara's mind raced, calculating angles, strengths, weaknesses. She noticed a loose steel beam above the monster, precariously balanced on the edge of a ruined building. With a swift movement, she leapt onto a nearby wall, using her momentum to swing herself upward. Her blade sliced through the cables holding the beam, and it crashed down on the monster with a deafening thud. The creature staggered, dazed, giving Alara the opening she needed. She attacked with a series of precise strikes, her blades cutting through armored skin and sinew. Each movement was deliberate, calculated to exploit the creature's weaknesses. She wasn't faster than the monster, but she was smarter. She knew when to strike, when to evade, and when to wait for the perfect moment. Within minutes, the beast collapsed, groaning in pain before it finally fell still. Alara stood over it, breathing steadily, her eyes scanning the horizon. This was only the beginning. The monsters had come in waves, and she knew more would follow, but she was ready. She had survived countless battles like this, and she had always found a way. Humanity had given her one advantage that no monster could match: intelligence, adaptability, creativity. The streets were quiet again, but the city smelled of smoke and metal. Alara moved on, heading toward the next danger. As she walked, she passed overturned vehicles and broken walls, evidence of the chaos that had unfolded during the night. Somewhere nearby, a small child cried, hidden behind the remnants of a collapsed building. Without hesitation, Alara rushed forward, lifting debris and reaching the child, her strength and speed allowing her to move faster than anyone could anticipate. The child looked up at her with wide, terrified eyes. Are you?" they stammered. Alara smiled softly, crouching to meet their gaze. "I'm just here to help. You'll be safe now." She carried the child to a safer street, placing them behind a protective barrier she had set up moments before using a combination of debris and energy fields. As she turned back toward the center of the city, the first hints of sunlight broke fully over the horizon. The sky was streaked with gold and red, casting long shadows across the ruined buildings. For a brief moment it felt almost peaceful, almost normal, almost as if the monsters had never come. But Alara knew better. She had learned that the world could never truly be calm. Threats came in many forms, some visible and terrifying, others quiet and insidious. She had to be ready for all of them. She reached the edge of a wide boulevard where the largest monster she had ever faced awaited. Its body was covered in armored plates, jagged spikes protruding from its back, and eyes that glowed with a cruel intelligence. Unlike the others, this one didn't just attack blindly. It calculated, it adapted, it learned. It was fast, brutal, and relentless. Alara didn't hesitate. She studied the creature, noticing small patterns in its movement, the way it shifted its weight before each strike, the tiny gaps in its armor. She could feel her pulse steady, her mind sharpening with clarity. This was what she was made for, not the destruction, not the fear, but the challenge. The battle began with a roar that shook the surrounding buildings. Alara dodged the first strike, rolling under a swinging limb, her blade flashing in a streak of blue light. The monster lashed out again, but she anticipated the movement, striking at the joints where its armor was weakest. Sparks flew as metal met energy blade, and the sound of shattering plates echoed across the street. Hours seemed to pass in mere minutes. Alara moved with a combination of grace and precision, weaving through debris, setting traps, and striking at every weakness she could find. She wasn't invincible, but she was relentless. And humans, she reminded herself, had one advantage even the most fearsome monster could not overcome: ingenuity. Finally, with a decisive leap, she landed on the monster's back, driving both blades into the central armor plates she had calculated to be the most vulnerable. The creature roared one final time before collapsing, shaking the ground with its weight before lying still. Alara dropped to the pavement, breathing heavily, her eyes scanning the horizon. The city was quiet once more, at least for now. The dawn had broken, painting the ruined streets with light and shadows. She had survived another night, another battle. And yet, as she straightened and looked toward the distant skyline, she knew this was far from over. For now, she allowed herself a moment of stillness. The city was battered but not broken. Humanity had survived this dawn, and she, Alara Voss, had survived along with it. Her gaze lifted to the horizon once more, and a faint, almost imperceptible smile crossed her face. Monsters could come, armies could rise, and the world could fall into chaos. But as long as humans like her existed, there would always be hope. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the city limits, a quiet voice whispered in the wind, carried through the smoke and rubble. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Alara turned and started walking back toward what looked like a quiet street, though she knew no place in the city would ever truly be safe again. The dawn was here, the monsters were gone for now, but the day was only beginning. And with it her next challenge awaited. The sun climbed higher, casting sharp shadows across the ruined city streets. Smoke and dust still lingered in the air, but for the first time since dawn, there was a strange calm. Alara Voss walked through the shattered boulevard with careful steps, her mind already shifting from battle mode to something far more ordinary, at least on the surface. By mid-morning, she found herself standing in front of a familiar building, a school she had once attended before the world had changed so violently. Its windows were cracked, some broken entirely, and the gates were bent, but the familiar sign above the entrance made her heart tighten. Despite everything, life went on. Somehow, the city still tried to cling to normalcy. As she pushed the heavy door open, a silence fell over the hallway. It wasn't just quiet, it was a sudden sharp pause, as if every breath had been held at once. Teachers froze mid-step, papers suspended in the air, students' eyes widening in shock. Whispers ran through the room, hushed but filled with awe. Alara had walked into her classroom, and yet she wasn't just any student. She was the one they had seen on the news, the one who had battled monsters while the city slept. Alara stepped forward slowly, trying to appear ordinary. Her long coat fluttered behind her, still bearing the faint scorch marks from her dawn battle, and her blades were safely sheathed at her sides. She gave a small, almost shy smile, but no one returned it. They simply stared. The silence was heavier than any battlefield roar she had ever faced. A boy at the back of the room finally dared to speak. His voice was tentative, almost a whisper. Did you really fight them all? I did what had to be done. Humanity's survival depended on being prepared, even in the moments when it seemed impossible. A new student in the class who had arrived only this week leaned forward with curiosity. His name was Rian, a boy with sharp eyes and a restless energy. He studied Alara carefully, his gaze almost as analytical as hers. How do you do it? He asked quietly. How can a human survive against something that strong? They just destroy. Even when it seems impossible, even when you're afraid, you can survive by outthinking your enemy. Just as the bell rang, signaling the start of the next class, a tremor shook the building. It was small at first, barely noticeable, but it was enough to rattle papers and make the windows quiver. Students jumped, some clutching desks for support. The teachers stiffened, exchanging worried glances. Alara's eyes narrowed. She had felt that same subtle vibration earlier in the city, the kind that always came before the monsters attacked. She stood slowly, her calm demeanor drawing the attention of everyone in the room. "Stay calm," she said quietly but firmly. "It's coming. I can feel it." Alara raised her hand slightly, signaling them to stay put. She scanned the classroom, her mind already calculating possibilities. The monsters had returned, faster and smarter than before. This time, the school itself could become part of the battlefield. She walked quickly to the windows, peering out at the city streets below. Shadows moved among the ruins, dark, hulking shapes, more monsters than she had seen before. Machines and beasts alike, their movements deliberate and coordinated. Alara's heart didn't race. Her mind raced instead, faster than ever. She turned back to the class. "Listen to me carefully. No one leaves until I say it's safe. You'll follow my instructions exactly as I give them. We can use this building to protect ourselves, and I promise you'll get through this." Desks could be stacked as barricades, lab equipment could be used to create simple traps, and windows could be reinforced with heavy furniture. Every step was deliberate, every instruction clear. The students followed her lead, their fear gradually transforming into focus. Meanwhile, outside, the monsters were approaching with terrifying precision. They were unlike the creatures she had fought earlier. They had learned, adapted. They were no longer mindless brutes. They moved together, scouting, searching for weaknesses in the city's defenses. Alara watched carefully, calculating how to turn the ordinary classroom into a fortress. She assigned roles, giving each student a task they could manage. Some would barricade windows, others would monitor exits, and a few would help reinforce the structure using supplies from the storage room. Every action was designed to maximize safety while minimizing exposure to danger. Hours passed, and the tension in the room grew. Outside, the monsters tested the school's perimeter, smashing against walls, probing for weak points. Inside, Alara's instructions kept everyone focused, moving in a synchronized rhythm that no one thought possible in such a situation. Her presence was a quiet anchor, a source of calm amid chaos. At one point, a smaller monster broke through a side entrance. The students froze in terror, but Alara reacted instantly. Using a combination of agility and strategy, she diverted the creature into a trap she had prepared earlier, sending it crashing into a pile of overturned desks. Sparks and debris flew, and the monster roared in frustration before finally being subdued. The classroom erupted into whispers of awe. Some students couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. A human had just faced a monster up close and survived, even controlled the situation. For them, it was no longer a story on the news. It was real, tangible, and it had happened in their very classroom. Alara moved to the center of the room, her breath steady, her eyes scanning every student. "You see," she said softly, "humans can do more than we imagine. We're clever, adaptable, and brave, even when we're scared. This is what makes us different. This is what makes us strong." By the time the tremors subsided, the classroom had transformed. What had been a regular room was now a fortified space, a small fortress capable of holding against any threat until help arrived. Alara allowed herself a brief moment to breathe, knowing the immediate danger had passed, at least for now. But she also knew that this was only the beginning. The monsters would not give up, and the city would continue to face waves of attacks. Yet, for the first time in a long while, the students understood something vital. They had a human among them who could face the impossible, and they could follow, learn, and survive together. Alara glanced around at the young faces, some pale, some wide-eyed, some already showing a spark of determination. She smiled faintly. Humanity's greatest weapon was not technology alone or brute strength. It was the mind, the will, and the courage to act when it mattered most. As the bell finally rang for the next period, the students settled into their places, no longer frozen, no longer silent. They moved with purpose, guided by someone who had fought monsters at dawn and returned to teach them about survival, bravery, and human potential. Alara looked out the window one last time. The city was still scarred, the monsters still prowling in shadows, but hope had been planted. And sometimes, hope was enough to start a revolution of courage, a spark that could ignite the strength of an entire species. And somewhere deep in her mind, Alara already prepared for the next challenge, knowing that humanity's fight had only just begun. The afternoon sun beat down on the ruined city, casting long shadows across shattered streets and twisted metal. The distant hum of machines and the growls of monsters filled the air, a reminder that the city was far from safe. Inside the school, Alara Voss moved with purpose, her eyes scanning every corner, every shadow, every student who had placed their trust in her. The calm that had settled over the classroom was deceptive. Tremors ran through the walls once again, subtle but insistent, and Alara knew instantly that another wave was coming. These monsters were no longer random, they were organized, intelligent, and persistent. And this time, the school itself would become part of the battlefield. She turned to her classmates, their faces a mixture of fear and determination. "Listen to me carefully," she said. "They will try to break in again. We need to be ready. Follow my instructions exactly, and we can survive this." Some were still trembling, but even the youngest among them understood that human intelligence could be more powerful than brute strength. Alara moved through the classroom, assigning roles and reinforcing defenses. Desks were stacked against windows, lab equipment was arranged to create simple but effective traps, and wires from old computers and projectors were used to rig alarms. Every detail was meticulously planned, every action deliberate. Even the smallest student had a part to play, and Alara made sure no one was idle. Outside, the monsters advanced. They were larger, faster, and more coordinated than anything she had faced that morning. Their movements were precise, almost mechanical, as if guided by an intelligence beyond instinct. They tested walls, smashed doors, and circled the building, searching for weaknesses. Alara didn't panic. She had faced worse, and she knew that fear could cloud judgment. Instead, she focused on strategy. She moved silently to the front of the classroom, crouching beside a pile of overturned desks. From her vantage point, she could see the streets outside, the monsters moving like shadows across the rubble. A student whispered, How can we fight them?" "You'll see what we're capable of." A stack of metal tables toppled onto one, while a swinging door knocked another off balance. Sparks flew, metal bent, and the creatures roared in frustration, but none reached the students. Her classmates watched in awe. For them, this was no longer just a story from the news. This was real, tangible, and happening right in front of them. A human, a young girl, was holding the line against monsters that seemed unstoppable. Alara moved quickly to the back of the classroom, checking on students who were reinforcing barricades and preparing improvised weapons. "Stay focused," she instructed. "Every movement matters. Every decision counts. You can help us survive." Her lessons were clear, practical, and designed to maximize human advantage against brute force. Meanwhile, the monsters outside adjusted their tactics. They circled the building in a more coordinated manner, smashing walls where they detected weak points, trying to find a way inside. They had learned, and Alara knew that underestimating them now could be deadly. She stepped to a window and observed the largest of the approaching creatures. It was hulking, armored, and radiated intelligence in the way it moved, every step precise, every strike calculated. She could see it studying the building, learning from its failures, preparing for its next attempt. Humans had survived before, she reminded herself, and they could survive again, but only if they used their greatest strength, the mind. Alara signaled to a few of the stronger students to help her move heavier barricades into position. Together, they created choke points and obstacles that forced the monsters to take longer routes, slowing them down and giving the students time to react. Every decision was calculated to turn the disadvantage of size and strength into a strategic advantage. A loud crash shook the building as one of the larger monsters broke through a side wall. Dust and debris filled the hallway, and the students froze in panic. But Alara was already there. She grabbed a nearby rod and swung it with precision, striking the creature's exposed joint and forcing it back into the hallway. She ran alongside it, leading it into a trap she had rigged with falling metal beams. The monster roared in anger and confusion, unable to adapt quickly enough to the human ingenuity it faced. By now, the students had begun to understand what she meant. Fear still lingered, but it was tempered by awe and a growing sense of confidence. Humans were not helpless. Even in the face of creatures designed to destroy, they could survive by thinking, planning, and acting with courage. Alara moved through the classroom again, checking on each barricade and trap. She instructed students on how to use simple physics to their advantage, how to create distractions, and how to stay calm under pressure. Every lesson was practical, every instruction a demonstration of human adaptability. The monsters regrouped outside, their coordinated movements hinting at an intelligence that was frightening in its precision. But Alara had anticipated this. She had studied their patterns, predicted their strategies, and created countermeasures that allowed her to stay one step ahead. Her presence transformed the classroom from a place of fear into a command center, a fortress where human ingenuity held the line against overwhelming odds. Hours passed, the sun moving steadily across the sky, casting changing shadows that Alara used to her advantage. She led a small group to reinforce the roof, setting up signals and traps that would warn of approaching threats. Her attention to detail was meticulous, every action designed to maximize safety while minimizing risk. By late afternoon, the immediate threat had been contained. The monsters had been slowed, trapped, or forced to retreat temporarily. The classroom, once ordinary, now resembled a small fortress, a testament to human creativity and resilience. Alara allowed herself a moment to breathe, her eyes scanning the students she had guided. They were exhausted, some pale, some wide-eyed, but alive. They had witnessed firsthand the power of human intelligence, courage, and adaptability. They had learned that even in situations where raw strength seemed overwhelming, the human mind could prevail. Alara moved to the front of the classroom, addressing the students with quiet authority. "You see," she said, "this is what makes us human. We may not be the strongest or the fastest, but we can think, plan, and adapt. We can survive where others might fail. Today, you all played a part in that. You all learned something important. Fear can be faced, and danger can be overcome when we work together." But one thing was clear. Human potential had been proven, not through brute force, but through intelligence, courage, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the classroom, Alara knew that the city was far from safe. More monsters would come, more challenges would arise. But she also knew that she had inspired others, shown them what humans could do when they refused to surrender to fear. And somewhere deep in her mind, she prepared for the next wave, the next challenge, the next test of human ingenuity. For humanity, she knew, was capable of incredible things. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, even against monsters that seemed unstoppable, humans could survive, adapt, and rise. Ilara glanced around the classroom one last time before stepping toward the window to watch the city outside. Her students were no longer frozen in fear. They were alert, focused, ready. They had seen what humans could do, and they would carry that lesson forward. The city might still be under siege, but inside that classroom a spark had been lit. A spark of courage, ingenuity, and hope that would not be extinguished. And as night approached, Ilara felt a quiet confidence. Humanity had survived the day, and they would survive the challenges ahead, not because of luck, but because of their mind, their will, and their refusal to give up. The monsters might return, stronger and smarter than ever. But humans, Ilara thought, were always ready to meet them. The night had settled over the city, turning the ruins and twisted streets into a landscape of shadows and faint light. From the top of the school building, Ilara Voss looked out across the horizon. Fires burned in scattered places, and the occasional growl of distant monsters reminded everyone that danger was never far. Yet, in the midst of chaos, there was a quiet sense of triumph. The immediate threat had been contained, thanks to human ingenuity, courage, and teamwork. Inside the classroom, the students moved with purpose, gathering supplies, reinforcing barricades, and sharing what they had learned under Ilara's guidance. The fear that had once frozen them at dawn was replaced by a cautious confidence. They understood now that even in the face of monsters that seemed unstoppable, humans could survive, and even thrive, when they used their minds and worked together. Ilara walked among them, checking on each student, offering quiet encouragement. Her presence was calm but commanding, a reminder that human potential was not measured by strength alone but by intelligence, adaptability, and determination. Every student who looked at her could feel it, even if they did not fully understand. Humans were capable of extraordinary things. A teacher approached, hesitant but respectful. "Ilara, what you've done today, it's remarkable. How can we ever thank you? You've shown them something important," she said softly. Ilara allowed herself a small smile. "That's all any of us can do, show what's possible, teach others that even in the worst situations, humans have strength beyond what they realize." The streets were littered with the remnants of their assault, broken vehicles, crumpled metal, and debris marking the path they had taken. But the school stood firm, a testament to human resilience and ingenuity. Ilara stepped to a window, scanning the city below. She could see movement in the distance, survivors emerging cautiously from their hiding places, workers and volunteers beginning to clean up, assess damage, and rebuild. Humanity was stubborn, resilient, unyielding, and that stubbornness, that refusal to surrender, was the true strength she fought to protect. Back in the classroom, Rian approached her quietly. "Ilara, I've never seen anyone like you. How do you stay so calm, even when everything seems impossible?" "That's how we overcome challenges that seem bigger than us." They sat quietly, speaking in hushed tones about what had happened, sharing their fears and marveling at how a single human had changed the course of the day. Ilara observed them with quiet pride. She knew that this experience would stay with them forever, shaping how they saw themselves and their potential. Even in the quiet moments, she remained vigilant. She could hear the faint sounds of the city, the distant hum of machines, the occasional rumble of unstable buildings, the soft cries of those still trapped or injured. Humanity had survived this wave, but the fight was far from over. The world was changing, and humans would need to adapt again and again. Ilara moved to the front of the classroom and addressed everyone. "Tonight we've learned something important. Monsters will come again, challenges will grow, but humans have something no other species has: the ability to think, to create, to adapt. We have courage, determination, and hope, and together we are stronger than anything that comes at us." They understood that her words were not just about survival. They were about human potential. The courage to act, the intelligence to plan, the will to never give up. These were the true powers of humanity. As the night wore on, Ilara allowed herself a moment to reflect. She thought about the battles she had fought, the monsters she had faced, and the countless human lives she had protected, often without recognition. She knew that the world would never be completely safe, but she also knew that humans were capable of extraordinary resilience. In the distance, a faint glimmer of light appeared. It was not fire, not destruction, but something quieter, people working, helping one another, rebuilding. The city was far from perfect, far from whole, but it lived. Humanity persisted, and that persistence was unbreakable. Ilara returned her attention to the classroom. The students were quietly preparing for the next day, organizing supplies, reinforcing barriers, and reviewing what they had learned. Each of them had grown, even in the span of a single day. They had seen human potential firsthand, and it had inspired them in ways words could not fully capture. Rian came to her side once more. "Do you think we can really keep surviving like this? Against creatures like that?" They had not just survived. They had learned, adapted, and grown stronger. They had seen the power of human ingenuity in action, and they understood that their potential was limitless if they applied it with courage and intelligence. Outside, the city remained quiet for now, but the stars shone brightly overhead, reflecting on the shattered streets and the resilient faces below. Ilara stepped to the window one last time, feeling the cool night air on her face. She could sense that the battle was not over, that challenges would continue to rise, but she also knew something essential: humans were ready. Humans could endure anything. The classroom, once ordinary and unassuming, had become a symbol of human strength. It had stood firm against monsters, chaos, and fear. And the students inside had learned a lesson that could not be taken from them. Humanity's true power lay not in weapons, not in machines, but in the mind, the spirit, and the courage to act when it mattered most. Ilara finally allowed herself a moment of rest, sitting quietly in a corner of the classroom. Her eyes scanned the faces of the students, their determination shining even in exhaustion. She felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. Today, she had not just fought monsters, she had shown what humans were capable of. She had inspired hope, courage, and ingenuity in a generation that would carry it forward. As the city slept under the night sky, Ilara whispered quietly to herself, a soft promise carried on the wind. "We will endure, we will survive, and we will rise stronger every time." Their strength lay not in their size, their weapons, or their luck. It lay in their minds, their courage, and their will to never give up. Ilara rose to her feet, looking once more toward the city. She knew the path ahead would not be easy, but she also knew that humanity, in all its brilliance and resilience, would face the future without fear. And with that thought, she smiled. The monsters had been fought, the day had been survived, and the lesson had been learned. Humanity was unstoppable, and this was only the beginning.